It's been a relatively quiet January transfer window up to now, of course, unless you're Chelsea, who broke the bank once again. 100 million is the report that they've spent in total on Mudryk, the 22-year-old, who for a lot of the time looked like he was heading to Arsenal. For more on that, James Ollie joins us as well, Frank's still here as well. James, you wrote a really good article over on the website, kind of talking about how they hijacked this deal. For people who maybe don't have the attention span to read that, can you just summarise how it all happened?
Chelsea essentially agreed to what Shakhtar wanted in a nutshell. Arsenal had been negotiating for several weeks. They always said that they wanted this €100 million price tag satisfied, and it was a question of how a club was going to do that, whether it was going to be a fixed fee with add-ons and what that composition would look like. And essentially, Arsenal got to a point where they negotiated a €70 million fee up front, and then they were negotiating on the finer points of the 30 million add-ons and exactly what would trigger those, whether it be based on Premier League performances, Champions League performances, individual goal tallies, all those sort of things. And as those negotiations were going on over that 30 million and what it would look like, once that 70 million initial payment had been agreed between Arsenal and Shakhtar, that was the point at which Chelsea went in and said, OK, so we know you're going to accept 70, and actually we're fine, essentially, with almost all of the add-ons in the composition that you want them, so we'll do the deal. And it moved extremely quickly once Chelsea got involved. There were a number of other factors. Chelsea had been monitoring the situation up until that point. They'd been in contact with Shakhtar at the back end of December. They'd also spoken to the player with the acquiescence of the club. So they kind of knew that they could convince the player to join them if they found an agreement with Shakhtar. But when they did decide to get involved, it was very fast. And it really came off the back of the injury situation worsening. I think they've got 10, maybe 11 first-team players out injured now. Obviously, João Felix, that was another deal that actually had a knock-on effect for Mudryk, because they didn't really think they were going to do the João Felix deal. He was offered to Arsenal and Manchester United and Chelsea from Atletico Madrid as a loan deal in January. Chelsea were lukewarm on it, and then they decided to move. That happened very fast. And then Felix obviously has his debut at Fulham, plays brilliantly for an hour, then gets sent off. He's banned for 3 games. He's kind of added to the unavailable list. And they wake up Friday morning thinking, actually, we're really in danger of missing out on the top 4 here. It's now or never for Mudryk. Let's go and do it.
Who had the private jet ready, James? Who was there for him with that?
Well, Chelsea were the ones that took up the private jet, and they flew to Turkey to do the deal face-to-face. And I'm told that the negotiations started and finished in a matter of about 5 or 6 hours. So it really, and considering a deal of this size, that is a really short time to negotiate a transfer like that. So, as I say, when Chelsea decide to move, they really do not hang around. And Arsenal, I think, were caught off guard because they made so much of the running in this negotiation, and they repeatedly told the players' camp, my understanding is that they told them that, look, we will get this sorted, we will get a deal over the line, don't worry, you are coming to us. And I think they were blindsided just by the sheer scale and size of Chelsea's bid and their willingness to accept what Shakhtar were demanding.
Wow. Frank, it's the first time you've been on since this deal has been done. Do you like it?
I do like it. I heard Stevie saying that it was a gamble, and I agree with him. But let's say that every player that you sign, especially for this Hammond, will be a gamble, because if he gets injured, the day after, of course, you're going to lose all the money. Well, I'm happy to hear, and it's more joke than anything else. I know I'm happy to hear for once that Chelsea was fast, and I hope they would be that fast, on the field to score goals. That would be great, But
the thing is, humour, Frank.
Now the thing is I think he's a great player. He has a great future. We don't know that much about him. If 2 big clubs are fighting about him, it's because he was something great. So I'm looking forward to seeing him playing with the Blues. I guess he's going to play on the left side. But that type of player, we kind of have those players at Chelsea already. Even if some are injured, we know those players. I'm still looking for a striker. I'm still looking for a midfielder, a defensive midfielder, and it's where Chelsea has to put the money down. But let's say it's a good signing for sure. Hopefully, it's not going to be a bad gamble, as Stevie said.
James, who's running the show? Does Potter have any sort of input as to who they sign?
I did think it was quite interesting that after the Palace game, when journalists got a chance to speak to Graham Potter, that they just said, how did the deal happen? And he pretty much said, I don't know. I thought that was quite instructive. Look, I mean, he's obviously not involved in the negotiations. The club will tell you that he has an active role in identifying players. He's certainly in the conversations around recruitment, but they have hired an awful lot of backroom staff and recruitment individuals. Paul Winstanley with Vedat Ekbali were the two that went out to Turkey to negotiate the deal with Shakhtar. Todd Boehly, although he stepped down from this sporting director role, he is still around. They've hired one or two others as well. They've got probably 5 or 6 who are doing these negotiations. So there are a lot of voices in that club at the moment and I think that is leading to a little bit of a scattergun approach in the market. I think that's why you see suddenly Chelsea coming in for, I've seen a report tonight, I don't know how much truth there is in it, Leandro Trossard from Brighton. That's a new name, but it just would be added to a very long list. And I mean, how many forwards can they really sign? And even, again, going back to Graham Potter, I think it's indicative that even he is saying, look, when everybody's fit, we've now got about 30 players on the books. This is just unsustainable. And I think what's definitely going to happen in the summer is there will be a proper fire sale at Chelsea. I think they're going to be quite aggressive in moving players out. They're going to have to be, really, because they are trying to sign a new squad, a young squad, a very expensive squad in a very short space of time, and they're going to have to move out a lot of players because there's going to be just a lot of them who may, as it stands, not even be registered for the second half of the season, but certainly will not have a future beyond the summer.
How much patience do they have with Potter, James?
Well, they are quite adamant that they want to change the culture, the habitual player power culture at Chelsea, which was so prevalent under Roman Abramovich. And we saw it time and again with managers, even how successful they were. Jose Mourinho wasn't exempt from it, that eventually the players got tired of it. They downed tools. They sort of circumvented whoever the coach was at the time and went straight to the owner. And the manager was the guy who made way. And they're trying to change that. They are adamant that they want Graham Potter to be their man on a long-term deal. He's obviously signed a long-term contract himself. They're signing players to 6, 7, 8.5-year contracts in some cases, in Mudryk's contracts. That obviously is something to do with financial fair play, so they can stretch the payments out over a longer period of time. But they want Graham Potter to be the mainstay and to really, with this group of core of young players, be there for the long term. The problem, of course, is that he's going to have to get results in between now and the summer. And really, if they're languishing in 10th place for another 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks, you do. It's all well and good having a long-term plan, but there comes a point where you have to win football matches. And at the moment, they don't look like doing that on a consistent basis. And that is a concern for him. But as it stands, they want him to be there for the long term.
It's a point that Frank has brought up, James, in the sense that this season's done for Chelsea. What are they going to achieve? So what is a successful season between now and the end of the season from Potter?
Well, it's 4th, isn't it? I mean, obviously they're not going to win the league. 4th looks quite distant at the moment. Yeah. But, if they went on a run, you would say that this isn't a season where you would say that 1 or 2 sides are going to run away with it and be sort of, you're going to have 3, 4, 5, 6 sides scrambling for that 4th place. I think it's 10 points, is it, the gap at the moment? Yeah, so that's not insurmountable. We are obviously not as far into the season as we normally would be in mid-January because of the World Cup. So there is still time. I think it's easy to think we're getting carried away and maybe the gap is too big at this point. But it has to be 4th, or at the very least it has to be Europa League football, because although I don't want to labour the point about financial fair play, and if you speak to people at the club, they say they still have some headroom there. The fact is that they're structuring their deals over 7, 8 years because they need to stretch those payments out over a long period of time. They've spent an awful lot of money, 400 million quid you're talking about over the last sort of 2 or 3 windows. And that is obviously an unsustainable amount that puts you on UEFA's watch list. It puts you potentially in breach of financial fair play. And if you lose the revenue from the Champions League, and if you use revenue, which is obviously reduced for the Europa League as well, that is going to really put a constraint on them in terms of what they can do in the summer and, of course, their wage bill.
Last thing on Chelsea, James, I promise. Any more signings between now and the end of the transfer window?
Well, They did bid for Noni Madueke at PSV. They've obviously also had that bid rejected, or multiple bids rejected, for Enzo Fernandez at Benfica. So I think they are still looking to be active, but there does come a point where you're going to have to stop signing players and start selling a few. And I think what they do between now and the end of the window may depend on how many they can get out. They're going to have to get out at least one or two if they're going to bring in any more, particularly for big money.
Well, thank you very much for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming, premium content, and let's not forget as well, ESPN FC 7 days a week. Subscribe to ESPN Plus.